Kanye West is just the latest celebrity example of why your bank account is at risk. We've seen recently how banks can fail. The government has to step in and they can decide whether you get your money back. We've seen that not only in the United States, but in countries like Cyprus. Bail-in laws are increasingly becoming the law of the land. And yet, I'm not here to talk about bail-ins or bank failures. I'm here to talk about bank account freezing. Kanye West has spoken out about how his bank accounts were frozen. And he said it happened to him without any notice. Now, you might have famously seen in the news that Kanye West got a notice from his bank saying, we don't want to do business with you anymore. But what he suggests, to my understanding, is that the bank actually said, you're not going to get access to your funds. We're just going to move them out somewhere else. And basically said, you've got to go find somewhere else to bank. Now, many people only have one bank account. And I've been telling you again, in the wake of these bank failures, that's just not a good idea. Even if you don't subscribe to having offshore bank accounts set up legally, you want to have different banks to where if one bank decides they don't want to do business with you, you can just move the money right over. I can tell you from personal experience and from watching other people that sometimes when you want to get it out of a bank, they set up numerous different things where I had a situation. Oh, we can't use that intermediary bank, or we can't send to that kind of account, or we can't send to an account in those countries. And I had one bank that had so many policies when you could finally close your account, and they made it so hard because I didn't want to work with them anymore, and they probably didn't want to work with me either, that it was the only thing that saved me was having multiple bank accounts in multiple jurisdictions that had multiple systems, and including, in that, having one or two bankers who was pretty helpful and helped me problem solve during that time. So let's talk about why your bank account can be frozen and what it actually means. If your bank account is frozen, that means you can't move, generally speaking, money in. It means you can't move money out. And so if you have bills that are set up to be paid, they're not going to be paid. If you need to send money for payroll, if you need to send money for whatever, your money is on ice. And we see this, yes, for people who are suspected of money laundering, for unpaid taxes that might be more likely to levy your account. We've seen that. If you haven't paid your student loans, again, they might just dip in and take the money. Commercial litigation, judgments, etc. In different parts of the world, they could just say, hey, we're suing you for $10 million, and so we're going to apply to the court to put a freeze on $10 million of your assets so you can't move them out. Even if you haven't been convicted of anything, even if you haven't had a judgment issued against you, it's possible in many parts of the world to say, we're just putting your funds on ice. Now how do you pay your bills? How do you pay your mortgage? How do you pay your rent? How do you pay if you have a business, your employees? Look at what happened with Silicon Valley Bank, where a lot of companies said, if we don't get access to our money, and even the money that's not FDIC insured over $250,000, we're just going to go out of business. And so time and time again, businesses and people have failed not because they didn't have any money, but because they couldn't access their money. And so if you have money in different jurisdictions, if you have money in different institutions, you're going to be able to avoid that. There's also instances you can have your money frozen if you just buy securities in the wrong way in some markets. And so some of those things, hey, listen, don't involve yourself in money laundering, right? Pay your taxes, right? If you don't like paying your taxes, then pay your taxes and go where you're treated best. Find a place where you can go and live somewhere where they have much lower taxes or no taxes at all. Pay your debts. But I also say anyone can sue you for anything, especially in the United States. And if people can sue you and then put a freeze on your assets, that's a problem, right? And so it doesn't necessarily mean you did anything wrong. A bank may just not like your business. They may be de-risking. They may be giving in to public pressure. Hey, you shouldn't have Kanye West at your bank. They may decide we don't want certain kinds of businesses. Wise, for example, the payments processor, does not accept companies that help people form offshore companies. And they take great pains to say how we understand your business is legal and we respect your business and we're sure it's a great business, one of the best. But we don't take that kind of business. That's their policy, and they can do whatever they want. And so if a bank or if any kind of financial institution doesn't like you personally, doesn't like your business, or just decides that certain kind of businesses need to go, HSBC, the world's worst bank, went through in Hong Kong and I think some other jurisdictions and just said, hey, if you don't live in the jurisdiction where your business is incorporated, if all your customers aren't here, you don't know all the criteria, but basically that's what was said, then we're just going to offload you. And we're not even going to tell you we're offloading you in some cases. You're just going to go in and then not have access to your money one day. This is why, again, you can go offshore and reduce your taxes. You can go offshore and increase your asset protection and protect your wealth better. But you don't want to do it with just one. You want to have multiple different options so that you never log in, whether you're doing it domestically or internationally, and say, hey, I can't access my money. You never want to go to the mailbox or open your email and say, you're being cut off. I had a bank account in the United States that I was traveling too much. They said, you're logging in overseas. And they didn't quite say it this way, but they said, you're logging in from overseas too often. We just don't understand that. You're closed. That's common with online savings accounts in the United States. Banks like Schwab and a lot of other these online service providers that people flock to, they just don't really like expats that much. We've seen lots of people have their accounts closed. Ally as well. I had for over 20 years a relationship with Capital One Bank, back to when it was ING in like 2001. And they emailed me and said, hey, we're closing your credit card. We don't have to tell you why. They don't want to tell you why. And I said, oh, does this affect my savings account with you? I had a little bit of money because, hey, more accounts available. They said, no, how dare you even ask? An hour later, I'm at dinner. Oh, we've closed your bank account as well. So goodbye. We don't owe you anything. Get the hell out of here. Who knows what it was? I presume, hey, we don't like you using our ATM card overseas. They knew I was overseas. I told them I was overseas. They just decided one day, hey, I'm sure I wasn't the only one. We are de-risking against people who spend too much time traveling. And so you've seen banks in Switzerland that have froze and closed accounts just because, again, they don't like the nature of the business. Now, in many cases, you're going to have a hard time opening accounts where they don't like the jurisdiction your business is established, which is why it's so important to have your offshore business in a good jurisdiction where you actually can get bank accounts, right? These tax professionals that say, oh, just set up in Belize and it'll be wonderful. Yeah, nobody's opening a bank account for a company in Belize, all right? Nobody. Okay, don't even do it. And even some more legitimate jurisdictions are having real troubles these days. So in many cases, you won't get the account open. But some cases, hey, we just don't like something about you. And again, with the case of Kanye West, whatever you think about Kanye West, his banks just said, get out of here. And it could even be public pressure. Now, in some cases, banks don't even know the rules. When I tried to get my money out of that one bank in Europe, where they gave me every different roadblock, their suggestion was, well, why don't you just return money to all your customers, and then you could just collect it from them some other way. I'm like, I'm going to call a guy that did business with me, a year and a half ago and say, hey, I'm going to send you your money back, and maybe you want to go down to the bank and hassle yourself. I mean, come on. They didn't even know the rules, and I had to get a lawyer involved to say, yeah, that's not how it works. You can do this, you can do that, and we eventually found a way to get it out. And so the answer here, yeah, listen, if you go and bank internationally, there may be some things to deal with. We have a finance team in-house that basically when banks say, hey, can you send us an invoice to substantiate this payment? They send it. We probably get asked that more in overseas banks than we would in a U.S. bank. And yet, is it worth staying in a banking system where 3 banks fail in a week and the government picks winners and losers so that you don't have to send an email every once in a while? Yeah, probably not. Is it worth staying in a country where you pay 30, 40, 50% in taxes to not have to send an email once in a while, right? Probably not. So whether you're in your own country or whether you're internationally, banks can do whatever they want. And so you want to have a different mix of countries, types of banks, as much diversification as you can. You always want to be honest. You always want to tell the banks the truth. And there are going to be some banks that just from go, they're not going to want your kind of business, right? We don't specialize in e-commerce businesses, or we don't understand consulting businesses, or like Wise. We don't want companies, that help people set up offshore companies. We're not saying there's anything wrong with it. We just don't want it for whatever reason. We don't want Americans. We don't want non-Americans. We don't want people who live overseas. We don't want people who are digital nomads. We don't want people. There's many things that these banks don't like. And so again, they can change those policies on a dime. Now, what I've said historically is if you open a bank account where they start restricting new accounts to people, or they raise the minimum for new people, you can often be grandfathered in. And so it's a good idea to open up accounts that you might want now. I've got an account in Singapore. I put $1,000 in it, and I'm still allowed to keep $1,000, even though there's no way they would open that account for you anymore. I keep them updated on where I'm a citizen. I update all the information, and they've never done anything. Even though now sometimes they'll say, oh, you can't upgrade your account. Oh, now I want to put $1 million in. No, you can't have access to private banking. So we don't want you for that. But in many cases, you can be grandfathered in. So the idea is, how do I open enough bank accounts to where I'm going to operate ethically? I'm going to do the right thing. But that doesn't mean that some ambulance-chasing lawyer is not going to sue me for something stupid. It doesn't mean that there's not going to be a mistake from the government. That happened to me. Paid my taxes. Oh, we forgot you paid your taxes. We're going to take some money. That's not freezing, that's levying. But mistakes happen, right? Banks can change their policies. Public pressure can happen. You want to be in different jurisdictions. And if you're running a business, what I've been telling you is the business needs to be incorporated in a different jurisdiction generally to open bank accounts. Your US C Corp is generally not going to go to Switzerland or to Singapore and get an account, right? You need to have a different kind of corporate structure. And so once you're doing that, you might start to think, okay, well, how do I look at the tax structure? Is there a way for me to reduce taxes if I move part of my business offshore? What if I move offshore? Can I reduce my own taxes? And so there's lots of different things that you can benefit once you start to go down this offshore rabbit hole. But for many people, asset protection in a time of chaos in the financial system is very important. Nomad Capitalist has a suite of services and a suite of professionals around the world that I've personally found and worked with over all these years that can help you figure out, where do you want to bank? Where do you want to move? Where do you want to have your taxes? Maybe even in some cases, having a residence or a citizenship can open up new banking options. More options means more power, means more freedom, so that you don't get stuck in a situation as Kanye West did, where a bank just says, get out, and you're left to fend for yourself.